there hasn't been much of a shift. There have been pockets of people that have lived differently, Aboriginal cultures, Native American cultures. So the geographical determinism has to be taken into account. And you see the force of this dominant kind of desert-based culture and then the stratified societies taking hold and slowly eradicating all the other groups trying to live a little bit differently. And suddenly it's manifested as we have today with trade strategizing dominance as the virtue of our existence, the need to compete and win, and of course the development of countries, borders, and empires. Empires, if it wasn't the United States, in this type of climate it would have been someone else, because it's simply the most efficient state for any group dominance to maintain as much total global dominance as they can. You have to break it, and the only way to break it is to start with root changes in what started all of this, which is effectively the economic perception, the perception of your survival in your group. And if you change that, then you'll be able to slowly morph society back into what was really a pre-Neolithic kind of worldview, which was all based on community, gift giving. If you look, 99% of human society existed without money and markets. A lot of people forget that too. So this isn't some inevitability of the way we live. What is the silver bullet that can possibly transform this negative trajectory that we're on? And that is structural change of the economy. Morality is not going to do it. Our free will is not going to do it. Our rational sense is not going to do it in and of itself, because we are so inhibited and dominated by the structural psychology generated from our social system.
And reforms aren't going to do it either, which is one of the main points of your book, is that 21st century activism has been far too localized.
Yeah, I don't like to be one to criticize all the well-meaning people in the activist community, but I think it's a constructive conversation to say, if we don't focus on the root and we keep sparsely drawing attention in this or that protest or this or that activist initiative to certain pockets of effectively problems, it just ends up running in place. The activist initiatives that are required now have to grasp that and realize that now it's time for galvanization towards removing the foundation of our social system, and hence the market. We have to start to move away from market economics as rapidly as we possibly can to save our ecology and to save the stability of our society in terms of group relationships. The antagonism that's created with our class system builds into all the other antagonisms we see, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's nationalistic. So it's like that central kernel that keeps amplifying the worst of our group or anti-group associations.
How do we socialize and localize the enterprise, and who is standing in the way of this being done?
And obviously the forefront of it are the ownership class, as it's been historically called. The power structure is defined by the ownership class. And going back to the state has always been comprised of the heavy business interests of any given society, heavy economic interests, even before business was a thing, so to speak. And what incentive do they have to want to alter their position? That's why it's going to take a galvanized force of activists that the world probably has never seen in order to overcome this hurdle. And I'm not promoting any kind of violence or anything, but there has to be something that stops this thing in its tracks before the ecological crisis, if it is allowed to materialize in the way the trajectories show, between climate change, between the water scarcity, between all the other levels of pollution that are coming to fruition, the incredible amount of waste, more plastic in the ocean by 2050, more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050.
Good God.
The general destruction of the oceans, overall, because of various factors that are happening. If this is allowed to materialize, and this is what I argue at the end of the book, it will just create that much more class antagonism and make it that much more difficult for us to pull out of this horrible in-group, out-group phenomenon and the oppression that we see. So there's a time limit ticking down, because if things start getting literally scarce, remember the First and Second World War were dominance wars. They weren't based on scarcity. The kind of wars in the future, if scarcity hits like it's going to, if we don't change, they're going to be cataclysmic. The human society hasn't seen that yet, hasn't seen an actual resource war, not a real one. Not when water is now limited and people are going to go to war over it. And it's ridiculous to even think that would happen, frankly, because we have all the technology to resolve it. But the arrogance of the people that are in power and the myopic view of the business community is such that, again, they blinker these things out in favor of the general structure, and they're willing to forego the well-being of others euphemistically in order to preserve their positions. So no more respect needs to be placed on the billionaires of this world or the political establishment. I'm not saying that people should be just arbitrarily ridiculed, but we have to break the cultural violence, this incessant impulsive thing that's happened in society where we worship class and status and billionaires. And it hasn't gotten better. It's gotten much worse, as, again, I think the Trump's election signifies. And we should loathe people. Anyone that's a billionaire that doesn't say, I'm sorry, I'm a billionaire, but I'm gonna do my best, that's someone you would respect. Anyone that doesn't question the fact that doesn't raise the issue that it's wrong for it even to be possible that a billionaire can exist in this planet, it's just as it's wrong that someone should be sleeping on the street in their life. If that isn't pointed out, then the neuroses will continue.
It certainly is not.